So for this video, I want to talk about abilities, specifically abilities in Halo 5, because there's many abilities in Halo Reach and Halo 4 that were not carried over to Halo 5 and probably won't make a return in Halo Infinite. So for this video, we're just going to focus on the current mainline Halo game, which is Halo 5. Now, I can already imagine that some of you are thinking to yourselves, come on dude, this is pretty redundant, this topic has been covered time and time again, we understand how you feel about abilities. But this time, I want to go even more in depth. We're going to go further than we've ever gone before. I want to be as objective, thorough, and clear as possible in this video, and I'm going to show a multitude of examples to go along with what I am saying. There are several different points that I'm going to be touching on in this video that I have not heard presented by anybody else. Now, if you're someone who is more of a classic Halo fan, you prefer Halo 1 through 3 over the Halo games that feature abilities, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah dude, I understand why abilities are bad. They drastically change the game to a point where it doesn't even feel like Halo anymore. I understand it, you don't need to cover this again. If you're someone who is pro Halo 5, pro enhanced mobility, then you might be saying, yeah, I get it, the Halo community just doesn't want Halo to evolve. They want to play the same game. They want another Halo 3, number company bad, bungo good. And listen, to those of you who say that, first off, I notice a lot of you just love to oversimplify shit, and you act like the complaints of many classic Halo fans are not valid complaints. Like, you act like a lot of these people just bitch to bitch, when in reality their complaints are more than justified. It also seems like a lot of those people are more accepting of 343's mistakes, are more accepting of bad mechanics just because enough time has passed. Like, they've been fed shit for so long that now they're more accepting of it. They might be tired of complaining and tired of pushing for what they believe is best for Halo, and they're just more accepting of whatever 343 throws at them. Like, at this point, the Halo series has been completely derailed. It has strayed so far away from what it once was. And it's like when 343 does any little thing that looks promising or moves Halo back in the right direction, they get a ton of praise. And people forget that, you know, they're a big reason as to why Halo's in the position it is now. And just to clarify, for those of you who are living under a rock, Halo is not in a good spot right now. Hasn't been for a while. And I understand many of you are just tired of hearing people complain about Halo, about 343. You just want everyone to be happy and enjoy Halo again. I get that, I do. But the solution isn't to tell those people to stop complaining and just to accept the poor decisions and games that 343 puts out. Nah, people have the right to criticize Halo, to criticize 343. And a lot of the criticisms that I see are valid. They're good criticisms. They're fair points. And you know, if 343 just keeps feeding us shit, that does not mean we just have to accept it. Like, and here, let me also say this. Just because people are criticizing Halo and people are pro classic Halo, they don't like abilities and things like that, that doesn't mean we think that Halo is ever gonna return to its former glory. It doesn't mean we think 343 is going to listen to us and actually go back to no, that's not what that means. No. Like, when we talk about this stuff, like this video right here, I'm not making this video with the belief that it's going to change anything in the future, that 343 is going to listen to this. No. But I do want to point this stuff out, and I just want to discuss it. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I love to see people call out other individuals or companies on their bullshit. And if that company or person continues with the bullshit, I like to see people continuing to call them out on that bullshit. I don't care if 10 years goes by. That doesn't mean, okay, well, we have to accept it now. They're not going to change, so yeah, we can't criticize them anymore. We just have to be accepting of whatever shit they feed us. Like, no. Now, I'm not out here saying, hey, let's start a revolution. Let's rebel against 343. They need to pay. I'm not doing that. Some people get a little extreme with it for sure. But when I see people criticizing 343 on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever it may be, that doesn't bother me. Not because I agree with what they're saying, but because they're fair complaints. And I am aware that there's this notion that all the Halo community does is complain, they don't like change, they want to play the same game 10, 20 years later. Some of you need to wake up to reality. It's not just the Halo community. This would be many different gaming communities if the developers had fucked up as bad as 343 has. Fucked up in terms of straying so far away from that core formula that players fell in love with. In Halo's case, it's Halo 1, 2, and 3 for the most part. I know everybody has their favorites and they're all different. Some people liked Halo 4, Halo 5, Halo Reach. But remember, Halo 1, 2, and 3 were the first 3 Halo games. The first 9 years. 9 years! The first 9 long years of Halo. Halo 1, 2, and 3, classic Halo games. I always say this, and I'm going to say it again, 3 games and 9 years is more than enough to define the series. Not saying it can't change or evolve. I want Halo to change and evolve, but it needs to stay true to that core formula that many people fell in love with. Halo 5 drastically strays away from that core formula to a point where it doesn't even feel remotely close to a Halo game to many people. If other game developers did what 343 did to Halo, and yes, I know abilities started with Bungie and Halo Reach, but 343 carried them forward. If other game developers did that to their franchises, you would see people bitching probably worse than the Halo community. Right? You would see it a lot worse than the Halo community. Let's Halo 5's abilities. Let's throw all those abilities in Counter-Strike or Valorant. Let's just go do that real quick. Let's just throw them all in there. I'm sure nobody will have a problem with it, right? Games need to evolve and change, right? Right? No, wrong. Obviously, games can change and evolve, but there's a wrong and a right way to go about it. And spawning everybody in the game with 7 abilities that were not present in the original 3 games, in Halo's case, is not the way to go about it. Now, I just mentioned putting those abilities from Halo 5 in games like Valorant and Counter-Strike, and you can make the argument, well, Bungie and 343, they never put abilities in the classic Halo games. No, they just made new Halo games. Okay, well, even then, the next Counter-Strike game, or a Valorant 2, either way, if those games had every player spawning in with all the abilities you have in Halo 5, yes, the communities of those games would still be pissed. And I know many of you don't like to talk about that, right? Many of you just like, you turn a blind eye when people make that argument. Like, that's a valid argument. Let's talk about it. Counter-Strike. If Sprint, Clamber, Thrust, Slide, Spartan Charge, Ground Pound, Stabilize, and Smart Scope, if you want to count that, whatever. In the next Counter-Strike game, if it had all those abilities, that is, how do you do? Is that okay? Like, I'm talking to the people who are pro enhanced mode, but who like the abilities in Halo 5 and think 343 should carry them over to Infinite. I'm talking to you guys. You think that's okay for a game? Would that be okay for a game like Counter-Strike? If the next Counter-Strike game had all those abilities? I mean, would you be happy with that? If the answer is yes, then you have no idea what the CS community likes. And you probably have very little experience with Counter-Strike. I mean, I have very little experience with Counter-Strike, but I know if you spawned every player in Counter-Strike with the abilities from Halo 5, it would destroy the game and people would be pissed. It's common sense that throwing in abilities like the one, spawning in every player in Counter-Strike with the abilities you have in Halo 5 would fucking destroy the game and people would be very upset with that. Like, that, to me, that is so obvious, but like, when it comes to Halo, apparently that's not obvious to people. Apparently people think it's good for the game or it doesn't change it that much, and you guys just don't realize it, I guess. You might not realize just how much abilities in Halo 5 drastically change Halo. Hey guys, just popping in real quick as I'm editing this video. I just wanted to add that I know I keep mentioning adding Halo 5's abilities to Counter-Strike. But to be completely fair, I do want to make it clear that the abilities within Halo 5 will not affect a game like Counter-Strike exactly the same as it does Halo. Like, having Halo 5's abilities in a game like Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six Siege or Valorant, those abilities may affect those games to a greater degree than a game like Halo. But regardless, my point still holds true because the abilities within Halo 5 both drastically change that classic Halo formula, and they would also drastically change Counter-Strike or Valorant or Rainbow Six Siege or some other games as well. Yes, those abilities may alter one game more than the other, but like I just said, regardless of what game is hurt by these abilities more, these abilities they still drastically alter a game like Halo, and they would drastically alter a game like Counter-Strike, Valorant, or Rainbow Six Siege, etc. And in this hypothetical of Halo 5's abilities being in these other games, it doesn't even have to be Halo 5's abilities. Just think of other abilities that could hurt games like Counter-Strike or Valorant. And whatever those abilities are, just imagine those abilities being in those games. And then just imagine how the communities would react to these massive game-changing abilities being added to their game. Or maybe not being added to the current game they're playing, but being added to the sequel to the game they're playing. I've been playing a decent amount of Valorant recently, which is very unusual for me because lately I just don't play anything. I used to say I just play Halo. Now I really just don't play anything. Until recently, I started playing Valorant. And since I'm someone who has been playing Halo for a long time, I started with the classic Halo games, and then I seen how abilities started making their way into the series with Halo Reach, and then Halo 4, everybody had Sprint, and you could pick an additional ability, and then in Halo 5, everybody in the game has every ability. So when I'm playing Valorant, and Valorant's, there's only one Valorant game, and this is my introduction to it, I'm just thinking to myself, wow, imagine if the next Valorant game, if there was ever going to be one, imagine if it just had all the abilities that Halo 5 had. Everybody in the game spawned in with every ability that Halo 5 has. Like, imagine that. Imagine that. That would be so bad. And even if some people would like a Valorant with all these abilities, it's still changing the game drastically and straying so far away from what the first game had. You'd completely change the game if Valorant had the abilities Halo 5 had. It'd be a completely different game. Now, Valorant is a little different than Counter-Strike because there's different agents in the game, and each agent has their own set of abilities. But that is much different than every player in the game having every ability, and having every ability just constantly recharging, which is how it is in Halo 5. So just to recap real quick, it's not just the Halo community that complains about change. First off, we complain about drastic change, drastically changing the game to a point where it doesn't even feel like the original Halo games. And also, this would be many communities, many different gaming communities that complain if their games, or if the next game in the series that they play drastically changed that core formula that they fell in love with. And just look at the Call of Duty series. For a little while there, they tried the advanced mobility thing. They did that with Advanced Warfare, a little bit with Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, but they've returned to their roots with really the last 4 Call of Duty games have been boots on the ground. So we had 3 in a row that were advanced mobility, and the last 4 have been boots on the ground. So they've corrected their mistakes. Now, yeah, all the boots on the ground Call of Duties haven't been great, but that wasn't because they were boots on the ground. That's not because they were lacking abilities. Nah, people didn't like games like Call of Duty World War II for multiple different reasons, not because it was lacking the advanced mobility that you had in games like Infinite or Advanced Warfare. And I know I'm talking about the Call of Duty series, and it sounds like I'm talking about it as like a whole, as if it was one developer, but no, this isn't one developer. This is 3 different developers. So Advanced Warfare, which was advanced mobility, that was Sledgehammer. Well, they returned to boots on the ground with their next Call of Duty game, COD World War II. Treyarch, they did a little bit of an advanced mobility with Black Ops 3, not as bad as it was in Advanced Warfare, but still, advanced mobility in Black Ops 3 by Treyarch. Well, with their next Call of Duty game, Black Ops 4, back to boots on the ground, no advanced mobility. And then Infinity Ward, they did Infinite Warfare, also advanced mobility, and their next Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare, boots on the ground, no advanced mobility. Like, 3 developers, boom, 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 they all corrected their mistakes. I just cannot think of any other first-person shooter multiplayer game where the gameplay that was featured in the first 3 games or the first 9 years of that series has been drastically changed in the newest entry in the series. Is there any other franchise like that? Or is it just Halo? There's a lot of things that are just Halo, and a lot of those things are not good. So if any of you are aware of any other series that fits that criteria that I just explained there, let me know. I'm curious. Have other developers fucked up as bad as 343 has with Halo, or is this just a Halo thing? So now, finally, with all that out of the way, let's dive into it. I want to talk about Halo 5. I want to talk about abilities. Yes, I know people have covered this for years now. I've talked about this. You probably know how I feel. But I'm going to try to explain this better than I have before and show more examples than I have in the past. And some of you might not be aware of just how drastic these abilities in Halo 5 change Halo's gameplay. But we're going to get into it, we're going to break it down, and hopefully by the end of this video you're going to understand why I hate abilities in Halo as much as I do. Alright, so let's get into these examples. Some of this stuff is going to seem pretty obvious to some of you, but like I said, I think there's some people that just don't get how drastic Halo 5's abilities change Halo to a point where you can argue it doesn't even feel like Halo anymore. And one more thing that I want to say before we look at these examples is that if it was my choice and I could pick one ability to be removed from Halo 5, right? Get one ability out of the game. It was my choice. I would pick Thrust. I'm sure many will disagree with that because I hear a lot of people that do hate Sprint and some of Halo 5's other abilities. Some of those people are kind of in favor of Thrust. Like, people like the Mythic settings in Halo 5, which I believe was Thrust and Stabilize. I see some people saying, I would like to see how a classic Halo with Thrust plays. It seems like Thrust is the ability in Halo 5 that most people are willing to tolerate. To me, it's quite the opposite. That's the ability that I hate the most. And I think that's because of how much the Thrust ability is used during a match of Halo 5. Like, Ground Pound, I think Ground Pound is a stupid ability, and I don't know what they were thinking with that. But you don't see people ground pounding, or you're not dying to ground pounds as often as you're seeing people thrust. And my main issue with Thrust is it allows people to get out of bad situations. You know how many kills I haven't gotten, or how many times I've survived because I thrust behind a wall, or I get somebody one shot and they thrust behind the wall. That happens so much. And I when I'm playing Halo 5, which I don't do much, but when I have played Halo 5, I'm just constantly thinking to myself, wow, if this was classic Halo, I would have gotten that kill, 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 but I didn't get any of these kills in Halo 5 because they used this stupid thrust ability to thrust behind the wall, thrust away and out of a bad situation, and live to fight another day. Sprint is an ability that can also get you out of a bad situation in Halo 5, but it's not as fast as Thrust. Like, if you're standing next to a wall, you're one shot, boom, you can thrust behind that wall so fast. But with sprint, you got to ramp up to max speed. If you're getting shot at, it'll slow you down. You can't shoot while you're sprinting. So, that's not... I don't see people escaping bad situations with sprint as much as I see them escaping a bad situation with thrust. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if I could choose one ability to be removed from Halo 5, it would definitely be thrust. I think there are dumber abilities in Halo 5, but because of how often thrust is used in a match of Halo 5, that's why that would be the ability I picked to be removed. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to touch on in regards to Halo 5's abilities and how they drastically change Halo's gameplay, the gameplay that we experienced in Halo 1 through 3, the first 9 years of Halo, is how you can use certain abilities in Halo 5 to regain positions that you were forced out of. And also how you can willingly leave a power position on the map to maybe gain a better angle on an enemy player, and then you can use abilities in Halo 5 to quickly regain that power position on the map. So what am I talking about here? Alright, well, let's look at this first clip here on the map Plaza. So what you're seeing in this clip right here is I have the high ground, and this enemy player is below me, right by snipe spawn on Plaza. And he throws grenades up into this area. I don't know what it's called, like nest, is it nest? I don't know what the name of this area is. But he's throwing grenades up here to force me out. And he's successful in doing that. He does force me out. But I am able to easily, quickly thrust back to that position. So in Classic Halo, if I was to stay there, those grenades would have done damage to me, possibly killed me. In Classic Halo, if I would have jumped off of that position, I would have fallen to the ground. I would have fallen to bottom mid. But in Halo 5, I can avoid taking damage from those nades and still keep that position because I can thrust back to it. And more specifically, I thrusted and then clambered to regain that position. I can already see some people just rolling their eyes at this, like, oh, come on, this is such a niche situation. No, it's not. This kind of stuff happens all the time. I just don't think people really, I don't think they realize it. I don't think they process it. I don't think they realize that in Halo 1 through 3, like, that play would have worked, but in Halo 5, it's not as effective because of the abilities. In Halo 5, because of things like thrust and stabilize and clamber and some of the other abilities, you can be forced out of a position and quickly regain the position. You can dodge the grenades coming in. You can jump off of that platform and thrust back to it. Stabilize, thrust, clamber back. Here is another example of what I'm talking about. This is on the map Truth. Again, I have the high ground in Red Base, and I don't know what this area is called, like Red Window or something. I don't know. I don't play Halo 5, but you can see this enemy player who is below me. He throws 2 sticky grenades up here to force me out or to kill me, and I am able to jump off of this position. Jump off of this position where in any other Halo game, I would be falling bottom mid, and I'd be in a vulnerable position. But in Halo 5, I can jump off of this platform, out of this window, hover in the air, wait for the grenades to go off, thrust back, and regain that position. That isn't Halo. That shouldn't be Halo. It wasn't Halo for the first 9 years. That is a big change. And this type of thing happens all the time in Halo 5. It might not always be as clear as it is in these examples that I'm showing, but it happens a lot when you're playing Halo 5, this type of thing. Here is another example, and please excuse the reticle placement. I recorded this in Halo 5's theater, and if you know about Halo 5's theater, then you know it's shit, and the reticle placement is not accurate, so sometimes it's going to look like my reticle is not on the player I'm shooting at, but in the actual game, it was. That's just an issue with Halo 5's theater. But in this clip right here, instead of the enemy player trying to force me out of a position, force me off of a ledge, this is actually me willingly leaving this power position on the map to gain a better angle on this enemy player so I can finish the kill. So as you can see, I'm top mid on Fathom, and I'm shooting at this player. He goes below this bridge. I jump off of the bridge to finish the kill. Now in Classic Halo, if you would have done this, cool, you might get the kill, but now you're losing that power position. You fall, you fall down, bottom mid. You lose that high ground when you jump off of that ledge. But in Halo 5, I'm able to leave this power position to get a better angle, finish the kill, and then thrust back and regain the power position, top mid. That is a drastic change. In Classic Halo, the first 9 years of Halo, you had to make a choice. Do you want to keep that power position, or do you want to chase that kill? Do you want to chase that kill, jump off, get the kill, and lose that position? Again, same thing here in this clip. I'm top mid on Fathom. I'm shooting at this enemy player below. He walks behind this wall to cut off the angle. I jump out at him to regain the angle, and then I get to thrust clamber back to my power position, top mid, and get camo. And also I want to point out that I could use this method to jump off of a map where I would usually fall to my death, but in Halo 5 I could thrust and clamber back onto the map. I could jump off the map, gain a better angle, and then thrust back. Where in Classic Halo, if somebody jumps off the map, they're dead, and so you don't really have to worry about somebody jumping off the map to get a better angle, because they would just fall to their death. But in Halo 5 you could do that and then just thrust back to the map, clamber back to the map. Now I don't really know how many maps in Halo 5 where that could be a thing. I mean, there's no maps like Lockout that is just suspended in the air, and there's plenty of areas you can jump off the map, but I just wanted to point that out. Now here's another clip that shows what I've been talking about here, but also kind of leads us into the next point I wanted to make. So what I'm showing in this clip here is, as you can see, I'm shooting at this guy, and then I fade behind the wall, then I come back out to peek him. He is stabilized in the air with snipe, gets the body shot on me, and then thrust back to his power position, grabs rockets. So again, it's another example of what I've been talking about, but also I want to draw some attention to the fact that with an ability like Stabilize, it can put you in a more unpredictable spot. And what I mean is, you could have players just floating in the air in all kinds of different areas on the map. In Halo 1 through 3, you could really learn the popular positions that people would shoot from on any given map. You knew the areas people, or you had a better idea of what areas people liked to snipe from, for example. In Halo 5, you have popular areas as well, but you can also have people just floating in the air. And not only are they floating in the air, but they can just clamber back to that position that they jumped off of. And yeah, in Classic Halo, you could jump off of ledges, and so, when you turned a corner, you might have somebody falling in the air with a snipe, and he might snipe you when you turn that corner. You didn't expect him just to be in the middle of the air. But the thing is, in Classic Halo, that person, they can't get back to that power position. They're falling down to whatever's below them. And also, the fact that they're falling makes it a little harder to aim and hit that shot, whereas in Halo 5, you are stabilized in the air. Less movement, easier to aim, and you get to use your abilities to regain that position that you jumped off of. In Classic Halo, you almost had absolutely no control over your movement once your feet have left the ground. I say almost none, because you could spam crouch to kind of slow yourself down in situations. I mean, you could shoot the ground with a brute shot to give yourself a boost, little things like that. But for the most part, when you jumped, your feet left the ground, that was it. You couldn't thrust left and right or stop yourself in the air by stabilizing. You couldn't do any of that. You couldn't, ground pound. That's essentially you stay in the air longer, and then you do your little ground pound thing. In Halo 5, you do have all that. You do have this directional control after you have jumped, after your feet have left the ground. That's probably the most drastic change about Halo 5, is the fact that you can control your movement, your direction, when you're in the air after your feet have left the ground. And I just cannot shake the thought that there are probably some people right now that think that isn't a big deal. They probably think that's just a niche element of Halo 5, that you can control your movement in the air. Oh, it's not a big deal. It's, it's still Halo. I mean, it's a massive deal. It is a huge change. You must be losing your mind if you cannot see that. And I want to address something real quick that I'm sure some people are going to throw my way as an attempt to debunk this video or counter my arguments. I'm sure some people are going to bring up equipment from Halo 3 and say, oh, well, in Halo 3, you could use the bubble shield. You could hide in the bubble shield. You couldn't do that in Halo 1 and 2, the first 6 years of Halo. So Halo 3 isn't Halo. To those of you who feel that way, I think it is time to wake up and realize that Halo 1, 2, and 3 are all different games. They're not exactly the same, hence why it's Halo 1, 2, and 3. 3 different games, because they are different, but they're all still Halo. They did not make the drastic changes that Halo 5 did. And yes, Halo Reach and Halo 4, they made some big changes as well, but I'm just comparing Halo 5 to the classic Halo games because Halo 5 is the current mainline Halo game. And also in regards to equipment in Halo 3, please don't try to save yourself the embarrassment of comparing a piece of equipment that spawns on the map. Every piece of equipment isn't even on every map. It's a one-time use. It can be destroyed. You have to fight over it to obtain it. And, it's on a respawn. It's not constantly there. And, like, if you're trying to compare equipment to spawning into Halo 5 with every ability in the game, and the abilities, they constantly recharge so you can keep using them over and over and over and over and over and over again, you are an idiot. And hey, I know this video might be a little long or very long. I don't care. I want to get this all out here. I'll put it all into this video. People that want to watch it can watch it. If not, whatever. Here is another clip similar to the last. This is on Plaza. I am over here on this ramp. The enemy player is over there with a snipe. Again, I don't know the map location names, but I am shooting at him, and I fade behind this wall here. Now, when I come back out from behind this wall and I re-peek him, I look at the position that I last saw him. You never really know where that player went or if he went anywhere when you take your eyes off of him, right? So it's never 100%, so you have to make some kind of assumption. So I assume he's still up in that high position. But that is in fact not the case, and as you can see, when I re-peek him, he is actually further to the right, floating in the air. Floating in the air. Again, you can jump out. He could jump off of that position in Classic Halo. He could do that and still be in that area when I re-peek. But he is falling, right? He is not sitting still in the air. I mean, you're not completely still when you stabilize, but you're pretty still, and it's easier to hit the shot than if you were falling. I'm not saying hitting a falling snipe is a tall task, but when you're floating in the air, barely moving, that makes it easier. So basically what I am showing in this clip is that despite that enemy player jumping off of that position, despite him jumping off of it, he is able to float in the air and get a nice steady shot when I re-peek him. And in some cases, not this clip right here, but in some of the clips I've already shown, you were able to thrust back to that position that you jumped off of and keep that power position. And even if it's not a power position, whatever, you're able to thrust back, clamber, and regain that position that you left. Whereas in Classic Halo, if this situation played out in Classic Halo and he jumped off of that ledge, he's falling to the ground. He's not stabilized in the air. He's falling. It's a little bit harder of a shot. It's a little bit harder of a shot to hit. and he cannot thrust back and regain that position that he jumped off of. Alright, so here is another clip on Coliseum. I am in red base, and I am shooting at a player over by snipe area. He is in an elevated position, and he has snipe. I put a couple shots into him. I fade behind this wall to block the angle, but that player, he jumps out, stabilizes in the air, which, hey, remember, in Classic Halo, you can jump out like that, but in Classic Halo, you're falling to the ground. In Halo 5, he jumps out, he stabilizes, gives himself a nice steady shot, hits the shot, and then thrusts back and regains the position that he just left. Essentially, not being punished for jumping off of that position. He didn't fall bottom mid, he just thrust, clamber back, keep the position, jump off of it to gain an angle, get the kill, and just thrust back to the position real quick. Okay, so now I want to continue to talk about the thrust ability and how you can use the thrust ability to get yourself out of many different bad situations. Situations that you wouldn't have been able to get yourself out of in Classic Halo, in the first 3 Halo games, in the first 9 years of Halo. Again, I'm not just pointing out all the differences between Classic Halo and Halo 5, I'm pointing out these massive differences, these things that occur all the time in Halo 5, okay? It's very important to remember that. I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to say it one more time. I'm not sitting here trying to point out every difference between Halo 5 and Classic Halo. I am mainly just pointing out the massive differences between the games. And these massive differences occur all the time in Halo 5. These changes I'm pointing out are drastic and frequent. So these 2 clips right here are the same scenario. It's a basic clip where it shows me shooting at an enemy player. I get him one shot, and that player thrusts behind the wall and gets away. In Classic Halo, that player would not have been able to thrust behind that wall, therefore they could not have gotten behind that wall and to safety fast enough, and I may have had time to finish the kill. But in Halo 5, they use the thrust ability, they get away, I don't get that kill. And not only are they using thrust to escape, to stay alive and live to fight another day, but you also got to remember, when a player is thrusting, that is a harder shot to hit because of how fast their player model is moving. So it's not just getting that player out of that bad situation, but it's also making them harder to hit when they do it. Again, not something you would experience in Classic Halo. Here is another clip showing how thrust can get you out of a bad situation and actually end up giving you the upper hand. And let me just say real quick, if it wasn't obvious already, these were staged clips. Me and my friend, we went into a custom game, and we essentially played these scenarios out. But let me be clear, this stuff happens all the time in Halo 5's matchmaking. We just went into a custom game to play out these scenarios so I could easily record it. And plus, I really didn't want to play Halo 5, so yeah. Okay, so in this clip right here on Truth, it starts out as a normal gunfight. We're trading shots back and forth. He jumps out towards the left of the screen. I throw a grenade where I think he is going to land, and then I fade behind this piece of geometry right here, hoping that the nade kills him or does a significant amount of damage. But unfortunately, in Halo 5, he uses his thrust ability to dodge the grenade, and when I re-peek, not only did he not get damaged by the grenade, but now he is in a different position than where he would have been if this was Classic Halo, if this was the first 3 Halo games, if this was the first 9 years of Halo. So obviously what's being shown in this clip is a player using thrust, again to get himself out of a bad situation, to avoid getting hit by that nade. In Classic Halo, if somebody jumps out to the left or the right or jumps anywhere, you can time it. You can throw a grenade where they're going to land, right below their feet. And if you predicted it right, if you calculated where they're going to land after they get jumped, they're going to get hit by the grenade. They don't have any control, or they pretty much have no control over their movement once they're in the air, with a few minor exceptions. Again, I don't want to say you have absolutely no control over your movement after your feet have left the ground in Classic Halo, because technically you can do things like, using a brute shot to elevate yourself by shooting the ground, spamming crouch, you could equipment jump in Halo 3. So technically, sometimes, yeah, you could control your movement after your feet have left the ground. But for the most part, in a normal scenario, in Classic Halo 1, 2, or 3, you jump, and that's it. You don't have much control at all over your movement. And something that players did all the time in Classic Halo is predicting where a player is going to land after they have jumped. They could be jumping on just normal ground, or they could be jumping off of a elevated structure. But if you throw a grenade right where they're going to land, and you time it right so that the grenade goes off just as they're landing, you either get the kill or you do significant damage. That type of scenario has been flipped on its head in Halo 5, because if a player jumps in Halo 5 and you throw that grenade where you think he's going to land and you time it so that it goes off just as he would land there, that player can just thrust away, or clamber onto a ledge nearby, or stabilize and hover in the air and either take no damage to the grenade or take less damage because you're not falling directly on it. So in this clip right here, I willingly decided to stop shooting at that player to throw the grenade, which resulted in him getting an extra shot on me, because if he lands on that grenade, that'll finish him off. But again, it's Halo 5, so that's not how things work. And listen, I understand that it's Halo 5, it's a different game, different thing, you gotta do different things, but again, these differences, these changes are so drastic. That's the point I'm making. I know there are counters to these situations. I know that you have to play these situations different in Halo 5. I get that, but that's my point. It's so different. It's too different. And it is completely justified that classic Halo fans would hate some of the newer Halo titles. So again, what most likely would have been a decent grenade if this were any of the classic Halos turns out to be not so great in Halo 5 because of things like abilities. That enemy player can thrust away, avoiding that grenade, not taking damage from it. And not only does he thrust away from the grenade, but it makes it harder to predict where that player will be when I re-peek him. In classic Halo, there's no gimmicky abilities to get you away from that grenade fast. So most likely they would have taken damage from it. And also, if I fade behind a wall and then re-peek an enemy, I have a much better idea as to where they're going to be in classic Halo than in a game like Halo 5 with gimmicky abilities that allow you to get away from that last known position pretty quickly. This is another clip of the same situation. As you can see, me and this player get into a gunfight. He jumps out to the right. I throw a grenade where I think he is going to land, or at least close to it. I fade behind the wall, and notice how as I'm beginning to re-peek this enemy, notice where he already is. He's already way over here already, getting an angle on me and avoiding taking damage from that nade. Again, these are things that happen all the time in Halo 5, but in classic Halo, the first 3 Halo games, the first 9 years of Halo, this type of situation here would be strange, because one, you would be expecting that player to have taken damage from that grenade or even died to it, and also you wouldn't expect him to be all the way over here this quick. And again, you could argue that this is part of Halo 5, that you have to account for these things. And I would agree with you. Yeah, you're right. But again, the point is, it's too different. These things are too different, and they occur too frequently. If thrust was an ability placed on the map that players had to fight over to obtain, and this is something that would occur occasionally, then okay, fine. But this is all the time. And I've noticed when I've played Halo 5, which isn't a ton, but I've played it, and I have to not forget everything I know from classic Halo, but I really have to switch things up when playing Halo 5 if I want to find success. And when you're able to switch between Halo 1 and 2 and 3 seamlessly, and you find yourself having to significantly change up your playstyle in Halo 5 if you want to find success, that's a problem. And it's not a problem with the player, it's a problem with the game. Because Halo 1, 2, and 3 are all different. They are all different. Halo 1, 2, and 3, they're all great games in their own right, and they all have their differences. But then you have a game like Halo 5, and it's way too different. It's way too different. And I want to make it clear, my argument has never been that Halo 5 is a bad game. It's mainly been that it is a bad Halo game. If you want to sit here and say Halo 5 is a great game, just not a great Halo game, okay, cool. I won't argue that. Honestly, I probably would give Halo 5 more praise if it wasn't a Halo game, because there's games that I can think of that felt like Halo somewhat, that I've really liked that because they kind of reminded me of Halo, but they were still drastically different than the first 3 Halo games. But I still kind of enjoyed that there were elements within the games that seemed similar to Halo. And Halo 5 is more like Halo than some of these other games I'm thinking of, but I can't stand Halo 5. And I think that's mainly because it's supposed to be a Halo game, and it is so different. These other games that kind of remind me of Halo somewhat, they're not trying to be a Halo game. They're not supposed to be a Halo game. They're not called Halo. And I remember Ghost Ayami, he said this back in, I think it was like 2013. That was the Halo 4 days. He said something along the lines of, hey, 343, if you want to make a game like this, he was talking about Halo 4, go right ahead, but don't call it Halo. He said something like that. And I'll say the same thing right now. I mean, if you want to make a game like this, you want to continue down this route of abilities, okay, just don't call it Halo. Just don't call it Halo. Now, I do have a few more clips similar to the last clip we just took a look at, and I do want to run through these real quick. See, this one right here is a little further away. We get into a gunfight. That player jumps out to his right. I throw a grenade where I think he's going to land. I fade behind the wall. I re-peek, and he has thrusted away from the grenade, not taking damage from it, or taking minimal damage from it. And he's also all the way over here on the right of my screen, or towards the right of my screen when I re-peek, because he was able to get over there so fast because of abilities like thrust. Now, in this next clip, the grenade placement might not be perfect. It might not be perfect in any of these clips, but just look past that, because if the grenade placement is off a little, that is besides the point. In this clip right here, you can see that this player jumps off a top mid on truth, and I throw a grenade where I think he is going to land. And in any of the classic Halo games, in the first 9 years of Halo, when this player jumps off a top mid, he's coming down to the ground around that area where I threw that grenade. He's coming down. But it's Halo 5, so you can change your direction in the air. That is such a big thing. That is such a massive thing. Once your feet have left the ground, you can significantly change your direction. You can thrust backwards, thrust to the left, thrust forward. You can land anywhere. Whereas if this was classic Halo, he's landing on the ground. He's landing bottom mid area right there. Like, I know where he's landing. I see where he jumped, and I know where he's landing. Not in Halo 5. Nope. He didn't even have to thrust. He could have just stabilized. He could have stabilized and then thrust. He could have thrusted then stabilized. He could have ground. He could have done. There's so much control that players have in the air once their feet have left the ground in Halo 5. That's just not Halo. That's just not Halo. Maybe that's a way to help balance thrust. You can't thrust once your feet have left the ground. Maybe that would help. Maybe you can't use abilities when you're in the air. I mean, that would definitely help retain the type of gameplay we experienced in Halo 1 through 3. Again, with these next two clips, the grenade placement and the timing might not be perfect, but you get the idea. This player jumps out of window on truth. I throw a grenade around where I think he's going to land, but he can easily change his direction in the air and thrust bottom of the base.
that is just so unusual. Like, think of that. Nobody's doing something like that in Halo 1 through 3. If you jump out of a window like that, you are committing. That is a commitment. And after your feet have left the ground, you're going to somewhat slowly fall to the bottom of the map. Not in Halo 5. Not in Halo 5. That player probably could have thrusted back to window and just gone right back to where he jumped out of. In this case, they thrusted bottom of the base, getting to safety. You're allowed to jump out like that and bait somebody's grenades, essentially, and then just easily thrust back to safety. I'll say it again, if there's one ability I could remove from Halo 5, it would be thrust, because it is one of the most used abilities. It is one of the most used abilities to get players out of bad situations. People use thrust all the time to avoid dying, all the time to avoid taking damage. And when I play Halo 5, which isn't often, but I have played it, I just can't look past all the situations where enemy players get away and they stay alive. But I would have had those kills. I would have probably had those kills if it was Halo 1, 2, or 3. But in Halo 5, so many of these kills I would have had in classic Halo, they get away because of things like abilities. In these two clips, you can easily see this player is jumping off of this elevated piece of geometry on the map Truth, and he is heading towards this grenade on the ground. It's looking like he's going to fall on this plasma grenade on the ground, but luckily it's Halo 5, and he is able to quickly stop his momentum and thrust backwards. Again, the grenade placement and timing may not have been perfect here to secure the kill, but that's besides the point. Assume that the grenade placement and the timing was perfect. In a game like Halo 5, it is no guarantee that that player is going to land on that because of abilities, because you could float in the air, because you can thrust away, because you can use ground pound. I'll say it again, in classic Halo, in Halo 1 through 3, in the first 9 years of Halo, if a player jumps off of a structure, or even just jumps on the ground, and you throw a grenade below his feet, you place it right, you time it right, it's very likely that player is going to get hit by the grenade, take damage from it, or possibly even kill that player. I understand at this point of the video we're kind of going over the same things, and we're going to touch on some new stuff in a second, but it's intentional that we're going over these things again, because I want to show more clips. I want to make it real crystal clear of how different a game like Halo 5 is. A lot of these idiots will say things like, oh, the classic Halo fans they can't handle a Spartan sprinting, oh my god. And those type of people are either just trolling or have no idea what's going on. They don't understand anything around them and they are very confused. And speaking of sprint, that is what I want to talk about next. You might feel that this topic has been covered thoroughly over the years, but I do want to discuss it again and possibly add something new to the discussion. Obviously, we know sprint is in Halo Infinite. I'm not making this video as an attempt to influence 343 with their decisions that they make on Infinite. No, I'm just making this video to put this all out there and really display how different a game like Halo 5 is than the first 9 years of Halo. And it should be real clear that it is beyond justifiable for people to say Halo 5 doesn't feel like Halo. I think the main complaint with sprint in Halo has always been about players running away from battles and staying alive, and 343 has tried to combat that with Halo 5. Obviously, they have it so that your shields don't recharge when you sprint. Actually, if your shields are almost recharged in Halo 5 and you tap sprint for a millisecond, it restarts your shield recharge time. I think that's a little I don't like that at all. Like, if you just tap sprint for a second, your shield recharge, the time resets. Like, even if I just tap sprint, like I didn't even cover any ground by doing that. Why are you punishing me? I think that is such a stupid idea. Also, in Halo 5, it takes longer to reach your maximum sprint speed, longer than it took in a game like Halo Reach. And while people do still get themselves out of bad situations in Halo 5 by sprinting away, I think that's kind of overshadowed by the thrust ability. I think people mainly use thrust to get themselves out of these bad situations, as opposed to sprint. I mean, they still do it with sprint, but you have a lot more abilities in Halo 5, so you can use multiple different abilities to get yourself out of a bad situation and stay alive. But what I want to discuss about sprint in Halo 5, or any of the Halos really, is this right here. If you have a player in front of you, and maybe they have their back turned to you, an enemy player, and they start sprinting, they start running away from you. To keep up with that player, you have to sprint as well if you want to keep up with them, if you don't want them pulling away from you. As you can see in this clip right here, I am not doing that. I am walking, and this player is getting further and further away, but in the clip right here, where I also sprint, I do keep up with this guy. Now, the problem I have with this is that I have to sprint as well to keep up with this player, meaning that I have to you have to sprint in the direction you're looking. So I have to look a specific direction if I want to keep up with this player. I can't look 360 degrees and, turn around, look left, look right, look behind me as I'm moving towards this player. Yeah, I know you walk a little bit slower if you turn around, but it's not as big of a disparity between, walking forward and walking backwards as it is between sprinting and not sprinting at all. But anyways, the point is, in Classic Halo, if a player is walking away from me, I can keep up with them, and I also can throw grenades, I can shoot, I can look 360 degrees around me, I can do all that stuff. In Halo 5, if I want to keep up with that player running away from me, I have to sprint after him. Again, meaning I have to look in the direction I'm sprinting. I can't shoot while I'm sprinting. I can't look left and look right and look behind me while still sprinting in that player's direction. I can't throw grenades while still sprinting. I can't do these things. We talk about enhanced mobility. Which one is really enhanced mobility there? Come on. I'll say it again. In Classic Halo, if that player starts walking away from, it's not even walking. I guess you did technically run in the Classic Halo games, but it was just built in. It wasn't an actual sprint mechanic, but whatever. It was just the base movement. In Classic Halo, if I want to pursue that player, I want to keep up with him as he's moving away from me, I can do that. But I can also shoot while I'm doing it. I can throw grenades while I'm doing it. I can look left, I can look right, I can look behind me, I can look up, I can look wherever while I'm doing it. And that's not the case in Halo 5 at all. You're more limited in Halo 5. Also, in regards to the sprint ability, I want to talk a little bit about how players can traverse the map so quickly using multiple abilities, but especially sprint. Now, people will say maps in Halo 5 are scaled differently. They're scaled much larger to accommodate for the abilities, things such as sprint. But I've never really understood that. Like, sprint is an ability. Like, people aren't moving that fast at all times. So if you make these maps larger to accommodate for sprint, well, what if we're not sprinting? People aren't always sprinting. So I don't get that. It's not like 343 just increased the base movement speed and said, oh, we're gonna scale the maps, differently. We're gonna make them a little larger because the movement speed is fast. No, sprint is just an ability. It's one ability. So we're basing the scale of these maps off of an ability, not even the base player movement speed. People are not sprinting all the time. So I've never really understood that. Like, there might be a jump on the map that 343 has increased the distance of to accommodate for sprint. So the only way you can make it is if you sprint. Well, there's downsides to sprinting. What if I don't want to sprint? You mean I have to sprint? I have to go into this animation where I can't shoot, I can't turn around, I can't throw grenades while I'm sprinting? Like, what? But with the abilities in Halo 5, including sprint, it allows you to get from one side of the map to the other so quickly. Too quickly, I would argue. And I just don't think that in Halo you should be able to traverse the maps that fast. You shouldn't be able to get from one side of the map to the other that fast. Halo 3 had things like man cannons, but that was very specific. Man cannons were not something that was featured on every single map, and there was only like 2 of them on a map. So man cannons are fine, but every player in the game just having these abilities at all times that just keep recharging, that they can use to get across the map so quickly, I'm not a fan of that for Halo. There was always faster techniques for traversing the maps in classic Halo, but not like this. Not like we see in Halo 5. This is much faster and easier. And one clip that I want to focus in on here is this clip here on Truth. Truth is obviously a reimagining of the map Midship or Heretic. And in a game like Halo 5, it is what I would consider pretty easy to move from one base out the window to top mid into the window of the other base. Pretty quickly, pretty easy. You can also do that in classic Halo. Like if we take a look at this right here on the map Heretic from Halo 3, you can do that too. You can move from one base to top mid to the other base. There's different ways of doing it. One way would be grenade jumping yourself to top mid, but there's risk reward there. Okay, you're getting to top mid quickly, but you're losing shields. You had to take damage to do it. Or you could take the safer route, but it is significantly harder. If you go up here on like the side of the window of the base, you can make this jump. I believe this jump can only be made on hardcore settings with the increased movement speed, but you can make this jump on those settings. It's a lot harder. It's a whole hell of a lot harder than it would be in Halo 5 to get from the window to top mid, but it can be done in Halo 3. So those are really your options in Halo 3. You either do it this way, which is significantly more difficult than it is in Halo 5, or you grenade jump and take some damage. What I'm trying to showcase here is Halo 5's abilities. It allows players to move across the map quickly and with ease. And there's not much risk, not as much risk, and not as difficult as classic Halo. In certain situations. That can't be said for every scenario, but it can be said for this scenario right here. There are fast ways to traverse the maps in classic Halo. There are, but there's more risk to them, and they're more difficult to pull off. I think abilities in Halo 5 dumbed a lot of that down. I've showed these clips in a previous video, and I'm going to show them again here. These are some clips from ClearlyMe. He pulls off a ton of insane jumps. I'll link his YouTube channel and Twitter in the description. But here on Heretic from Halo 3, here's a couple different ways that he's getting from one side of the map to the other pretty quickly. And mind you, he's also running the flag while doing this, which is even more impressive. And I'm just showing this to make it clear that, yeah, you can move across the maps fast in classic Halo. And how he's moving across the map here in these clips on Heretic, it just, like, this looks like something that you would see in Halo 5. I think a lot of these techniques to get from point A to point B quickly is kind of dumbed down in Halo 5, because just doing a basic sprint, jump, thrust, clamber will, really get the job done in a lot of situations. Now, yeah, there are some difficult techniques in regards to Halo 5's movement to pull off. I'm not saying that everything about Halo 5's movement is easy. No, there are some jumps in Halo 5 and routes that are more difficult to pull off than others. I'm just saying I believe it is easier and less of a risk to move across the maps quickly in a game like Halo 5 than it is in the classic Halo games. I understand that the maps in Halo 5 are larger to accommodate for abilities, but even then, I still think you can move across those maps extremely fast and with ease. And the last topic that I want to discuss in this video today is about reticle and grenade placement. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's touch on reticle placement first. There are times in Halo where you may suspect that a player is going to walk out behind cover, either because you saw him walking in that direction, you saw him go behind a wall and you think he's going to come out on the other side, or maybe you got a call out. Whatever the reason is, you might suspect that a player is about to come out from behind a wall. You might place your reticle at head level, especially if you have a snipe, in anticipation that he's going to walk out behind the wall into your reticle. Boom, you pull the trigger, get the headshot. But in a game like Halo 5, you have a lot less of an idea as to when and how that player will emerge from behind that cover. And that is because in Halo 5, obviously, you have abilities. So not only can a player come out from behind that wall by crouching, normally walking, or jumping, you can do all that plus thrusting and sliding, sprint, slide, thrust, sprint, jump, thrust, jump out, thrust back. Like, there's so many different things you can do. There's so many different ways that player can come out from behind that wall. Whereas in classic Halo, you really either you just crouch out from behind, you come out walking, or you come out jumping. Those are really your only options. And you also have a much better idea as to when that player will emerge from behind that wall in classic Halo. Because in classic Halo, if I see somebody walk behind cover, I can assume that he's going to continue walking at that pace until he comes out on the other side of that wall. That's not a guarantee, but it's a safer assumption than in a game like Halo 5, because in Halo 5, once that player goes behind that wall, that player can start sprinting, or he can thrust, he can boost himself, meaning that he will come out on the other side of that wall faster. But what I'm showcasing in these clips right here on Coliseum is me placing my sniper reticle at head level, because I believe that a player is going to walk out from behind, or is going to come out from behind this wall. Either I saw the player in blue flag, or I just got a call out that he was moving in this direction. Regardless, I'm trying to place my reticle head level, anticipating that he will come out from behind the wall. But as you can see in a game like Halo 5, that player doesn't necessarily have to slowly walk out from behind the wall, or jump out, or crouch out. No, you could just sprint, slide, thrust, sprint, jump, thrust. There's so many ways that you can move. You can emerge from this wall a lot faster than you could in classic Halo in the first 9 years of Halo. So not only is he moving faster, but he's getting from point A to behind this other piece of geometry much, much faster than in classic Halo. There's less of a risk there. People talk about the abilities adding more skill to the game, making things more difficult. It makes the abilities in Halo 5 make a lot of things easier. It makes a lot of things, it diminishes the risk of a lot of things. And this is one of those times. That player can move out from behind that wall a lot faster than in classic Halo, making it harder to hit the shot. And he's getting behind that other piece of cover on the other side much faster. Now, if you take a look at these examples here, where the player just walks out from behind the wall, or jumps out from behind the wall, it's a lot slower and it's a much easier shot to hit. And that was classic Halo right there. That's classic, and it's an easier shot to hit, but it doesn't mean classic Halo's an easier game. No, there's just more of a risk when you are trying to move from behind one piece of geometry to the other while another player is watching it. So there's more of a risk there. It is more difficult to get away with that in classic Halo. But in Halo 5, you can emerge from behind that wall much faster, making it a lot more difficult to hit, and getting behind that next piece of cover on the other side a lot quicker. So basically, overall, it is safer to move around the map in Halo 5 than in classic Halo, because you have all these abilities. You can use these abilities to lessen risks, to get out of bad situations quickly. Now, I'm showing these next two clips to further explain what I'm talking about in regards to grenade placement. I've kind of already touched on this, but we're going to take a look at these clips anyway. Again, the placement of my grenade in these clips might not have been the most accurate, but again, that's besides the point. Really, what I am showing here is I watch this player walk behind cover, and I place a grenade when and where I think he will emerge on the other side. Now again, as I explained, in Classic Halo without abilities, it's a safer assumption, I should say, that that player just continued to walk at his max speed the entire time. And you have a much better idea as to when and where he will be when he comes out on the other side of that wall there, or that piece of geometry. But in a game like Halo 5, once he walks behind the wall, I don't know what he does there. He could thrust, he could start sprinting, and that's basically what happens in these clips here. That player that I saw move behind that piece of geometry, he did start sprinting once he was behind. And he emerges on the other side, thrusting and jumping. And so there's less of a guarantee. If you're that player trying to time and place that grenade perfectly when that player emerges on the other side of that geometry that you saw him walk behind, you have a lot less of an idea as to when and how they will emerge from the wall on the other side than you did in Classic Halo. And that's not adding this additional layer of skill. No, it's just there's more uncertainties. You have to guess a lot more in Halo 5. You could time and predict how things were going to play out better in Classic Halo. And in Halo 5, it isn't harder, it isn't more skillful to predict these things. No, it's just more uncertain. It's more of a guessing game in Halo 5. You have less of an idea as to how things will play out. Alright guys, so that's pretty much going to do it for the video. I know it was a long one, but this is something I wanted to make this video for a while, probably over a year. Like I wanted to go through and actually show these in-game examples of exactly what it is I was talking about with Halo 5 and how the abilities change the game so much to a point where it doesn't even feel like Halo anymore. And I think Halo 5's abilities change the game in a lot of ways that some people just didn't even realize. They don't realize. And that's why some people don't really understand why Classic Halo fans don't like Halo 5. They don't get it because they don't understand just how much the abilities change the game. And by no means were abilities the only problem with Halo 5. Now, Halo 5 had other problems as well, but the abilities, that was the biggest one for me. We still don't know at this point what type of game Halo Infinite is going to be. I don't know how many abilities from Halo 5 will make a return in Halo Infinite, or how they will make the return, but only time will tell. Obviously, I prefer Classic Halo. I prefer no abilities, or at least put the abilities on the map as pickups. I probably wouldn't mind that. Honestly, I probably would want that. I am an advocate of Classic Halo. That's what I prefer. But when I talk about this stuff, I don't think that I'm not of the belief that 343 will listen to me, or that I'll have any influence over Halo Infinite, or that I believe Halo will ever return to Classic Halo. No. Just because I speak about why I believe abilities are bad for Halo doesn't mean I think Halo will ever move away from them. I want to make that real clear. And just because it may be unlikely that Halo ever ditches abilities, doesn't mean it's a waste of time talking about these things. But yeah, I've pretty much touched on everything I wanted to in this video. This video was longer than I anticipated, but you know, a lot of my videos are longer than anticipated, so nothing new there. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.